Community and Faith Development. So I work with our Faith in Action programs. And we currently, if I could have the next slide, Carbon, we currently have 3 focus areas for Faith in Action at OUUC. And those are environmental justice, economic justice, and anti-racism. And we're going to close the doors because we just can't stand the noise out there either. So that's all good. I know. Noisy Unitarian Universalists at coffee hour, that never happens, ever. So these focus areas were chosen following a visioning session that the congregation did while we were all online during COVID. So it's not set in stone. This could change in the future, but through a process of talking about what was important to us and where people felt called to action, these 3 focus areas bubbled up. And so that is our current organization, is around these 3 focus areas. And speaking of organization, so this is our rather rough org chart for Faith in Action. And if anybody wants to look at this later, I can email you the slides or this image. But essentially, you'll notice that at the top is the congregation. Faith in Action does belong to the whole congregation. It's based on what's important right now to the congregation. And then below the level of congregation, we have the board and the minister. And so the board and the minister's role in Faith in Action is really to give us our guardrails. So congregation says, oh, we want to do blah, blah, blah. And the board and the minister would say, okay, what do we need to have in place to decide whether that's something we can do? Is that, whether it's a matter of using resources, if it's a matter of policies and procedures, board and the minister give us our guidelines around that. And then we have the Faith in Action leadership team and the director of community and faith development. And their role really is to say, okay, these are the things that are important, and these are the guardrails that we've been given of how far we can go, and now how do we actually make this start to roll? And then we have our 3 teams that are for each of the focus areas. And those teams are really, they're like, we've got this focus area, we want to move it forward in the world, and they come up with projects and actions. So we have an environmental action team, we have an anti-racism, anti-oppression team, and we have an economic justice team. Yes, this anti-racism team has added anti-oppression to their names. They're both anti-racism and anti-oppression. We also then get a lot of input from other interested and connected groups. So there's a whole bunch of UU justice organizations, and we'll talk about those a little bit more in a minute, but they send a lot of inspiration and information our way as a congregation, and we can plug into larger efforts that involve more Unitarian Universalists than just this congregation by working with another UU justice organization. We also have our community partners, which we'll talk about who those are, but people and organizations in the larger community in this area who are doing work in alignment with our values around faith and action. And we have affiliated and sponsored groups. So those groups may have a lot of OUC members in them, but they also include others from outside of OUC, and that group has a relationship that has been set up with OUC. And then we have short-term congregate-led projects. So somebody may say, I want to do a food drive, or I want to do a fundraiser, and then that for a while may exist as a project. And those tend to rise when there's a need, and then go away when that need is fulfilled. So I'm going to pause there because we want to take questions as we go. But if you have a question and you're in the room, wait for me to bring you the microphone. So are there any questions about our organization? Okay. All right, seeing no questions and none online, is that right, Garvin? All right, then we move on. So I mentioned I'd say more about the UU Justice organizations and what they are. So that's on our next slide. The UU Justice organizations are many. There are so many of them that, in fact, I can't keep track of all of them. We have a wonderful volunteer monitoring as many emails as possible. That's Ann Hundley. And I also monitor as many of these emails as possible. Ann is on the Faith and Action Leadership team as the liaison to UU Justice. And that really doesn't, that actually means just trying to pay attention to a bajillion emails and blasts and all that. Because there are organizations and campaigns within the UUA, such as Side with Love and UU the Vote, and more come up out of the UUA. And that's the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. There's also the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, the UUSC, and they are doing work primarily around the world with partners, but also in the United States. And they also bring forward things that we can be part of and engage with. Then there's UU Ministry for the Earth, which is Canadian and US, and they're bringing out resources for environmental care and sending them to us. There's Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice, which is within the US, and they're sending out constant campaigns and things that we can be part of. And there's Justice Washington, which is the advocacy and justice network of UU congregations, primarily in Washington state, but they reach out to Alaska, Idaho, and Oregon as well. So those are just some of them. There's others that pop up, like right now there's UUs in solidarity with Palestine, and others may come up also. So we get all of this, from these UU organizations that we can use as resources and we can connect with as we have capacity. And I see a question.
Does UUSC, is that an umbrella organization that distributes money to some of the other ones? Because I don't like organizations sending me half a dozen mailings throughout the year. I'll give it to one organization and say, share it. Because, yeah, I know somebody who gives money to the guest at your table and, to some of the others, but is UUSC an umbrella?
That's a good question, and I feel your pain, Margaret, about getting lots of asks from different. I'm not sure there's a good solution for that one. UUSC does give money out to its partners, which are mostly grassroots organizations doing justice work around the world. But it's not necessarily sharing its funding with the UUA campaigns or say UU Ministry for the Earth's campaigns. They are all doing their own separate fundraising. And that is the nature of it, yeah. The guest at your table that you mentioned, that is the primary annual fundraiser for the service committee. So we do guest at your table here, and that program is a fundraiser for the UU Service Committee and their work around the world that they highlight when they put out the materials for Guest at Your Table. Yeah. Any other questions about the larger UU justice orgs? All right. Was that a question online, Carmen? No. Nope, okay. So then let's look at our community partners. And that's the next slide. So our community partners right now are Interfaith Works, Garden Raised Urban Bounty, Grub, and then the many Share the Plate recipients and book sale recipients. And community partners is something that also kind of comes and goes for some of these organizations, and for some, it's a long-term relationship. Interfaith Works, we have a long-term relationship with Interfaith Works. And for Interfaith Works, we currently have Joanne Young and Tim Ransom on the Interfaith Works Program Council, and they also are on our Faith in Action leadership team to help us liaison and coordinate with Interfaith Works and what's happening with Interfaith Works. Grub is a relatively new partner, and Gail Reedy is our liaison with Grub and is working on ways to bring us into closer relationship with Grub. If you don't know where Grub is, they're a really close neighbor. So they're just like 2 or 3 blocks away from here. And that is yet another reason for us to partner with them, is that they're a neighbor organization as well as doing work that's in alignment with our values. Any questions about community partners? All right. And if you think of anything we've already moved on, just holler anyway. So next up to explain our affiliated groups. Right now, our affiliated group is Learning Right Relations, and that's the next slide. So Learning Right Relations, for those who weren't around or didn't know the history of it, it started here at OUC many years ago and has grown to be a separate but still related organization, and is doing the work of being in right relationship and learning from our Indigenous communities in this area. So Learning Right Relations sometimes uses the OUC space, sometimes we do joint projects together. You certainly will see things in the announcements about Learning Right Relations. And we have an agreement of relationship between OUC and Learning Right Relations. So that's our affiliated group at the moment. And Karen Jackson is our liaison to Learning Right Relations and is part of our Faith in Action leadership team to make sure that we're all aware of what's happening with Learning Right Relations. So then we have our own OUC Faith in Action teams. And you'll notice a variety of methods being used. So there's truly something for everyone. If you were interested, there's a way for you to plug in. Because we're doing education, educating about issues, educating congregants, educating the larger community, lots of different ways of viewing the education efforts. We're also doing fundraising and sharing our resources with others. We're doing advocacy and activism. Especially we are in the state capitol. There's a lot of opportunities for advocacy with the legislature, but there's also so many chances to do different advocacy and activism projects. And we're doing direct service. So bringing meals to shelters and other similar direct hands-on service. So the teams, the first one I'll talk about is the Environmental Action Team. There's several members here right now of the Environmental Action Team, and they have a shared leadership model, but if you want to get in touch with them, you can get in touch with Wendy Stephenson, who's waving in the room, and who's pictured there. EAT meets on at 5:30 on the first Tuesday of the month, and they have a potluck at their meetings. Isn't that cool? They eat.
That's how they get
That's how they get members. Well, one of the ways. The other way they get members is they're doing good work that people are passionate about. But some of the projects that they are doing are on the next slide. They're doing bulbs and battery recycling. The table was out in the Commons today. So on the first Sunday of each month, you can bring in your old light bulbs, old batteries for proper recycling. They're working on solar energy for the church. They're putting on education events. They have community partnerships with Green Faith and others. And they're doing advocacy around plastics reduction and recycling, around preserving legacy forests, and divesting from fossil fuels. So this is just some of the good work that they're doing. And you can join this team and help in their efforts, or you can just pitch in as on a particular project. And again, like I said, they meet on the first Tuesdays of each month at 5:30. Then we have the Economic Justice team. They're meeting on the third Tuesdays at 6:30 on Zoom, and they welcome more members. This is a small but passionate and good team that could definitely use some more members. And they're working on advocacy, on direct service, and providing institutional support to OUC congregants. So this team also sees that people have an urge to do things, especially around economic justice and fighting poverty, and don't always have the resources to do something. So this team also wants to equip us so that when we have an urge to do something, there is an institutional structure to help you do it. Yeah, and then, like I said, they could definitely use more members. So if you're interested, talk to me or talk to Tim Ransom or Connie Rule. And then we have the anti-racism, anti-oppression team. This is another smaller team that would very much welcome more members. They meet the second Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on Zoom. They're focused on education, particularly educating ourselves about dismantling our own internalized biases and making OUC a more truly inclusive, anti-racist, anti-oppression place and community. And then supporting community partners. So particularly for this team, they feel it's important not to go and do things for others, but rather with others, yes. If wished. Yes, Joanne said, if they want us to. Yes. So this team is focused on supporting, when called upon, community partners and community actions around anti-racism, anti-oppression. And if you're interested in this team and their work, you can talk to me or Joanne Young or Ann Hundley, and we would be happy to answer your questions. And Hawthorne Campbell, yeah. And Hawthorne Campbell. So then we have our efforts around sharing our resources and fundraising. So at every service, we say that we are sharing the plate, that we have a Share the Plate partner. This is one of the ways that we share our resources with the community. This next slide is far too small for you to actually read, but it basically is lists of all these organizations that have received Share the Plate funding. And again, I can send these slides to anyone who wants them in full. But organizations, there's a once-a-year application period of time. Organizations submit an application. We have a team, the Share the Plate team, that goes through a process of discernment of each application and chooses a slate of recipients for the year. They're scheduled for 2 months each, and so they receive a percentage of what is collected during those 2 months. When we come to worship on Sunday, we hear about our partner organization and the work that they're doing in the world, and if we're moved to, we can give more. But all of our organizations are chosen for impact in the community, for alignment with our congregational mission and values. And then we put on our big annual fundraiser, and that's this month. So Books, Brownies, and Beans is our annual book sale extravaganza. It will be coming up this month on October 26th, Friday the 26th. It's a 2-day this year. First time we're trying this, so people can come and shop on Friday and on Saturday. And the recipients, and this is another experiment that we're trying this year, we have the same recipients for the sale this year as we had last year, because we are working on building deeper relationships with the recipients as partners rather than just picking someone to give money to. So these 3 organizations are Interfaith Works, OUUC Ecosystems, and Osho Cultural Community Center. All 3 we've been in touch with about the sale. We're in communication with them. They were great partners for the sale last year, and so they'll be our recipients again this year. We'll decide in the future what happens next with book sale recipient funding, but for this year, we're trying this to see how it works, to deepen a partnership with the same organizations for multiple years. And I'll pause there in case anybody has any questions. Yes, another one in the back. Thank you for running the microphone, Tim.
You maybe just should hold on to it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, one clarification on the share of the plate. It's half the cash received.
It's close to half, yeah. So the percentage breakdown is that some of the funding is for operations of OUC.
Yeah.
Some of it is for the Share the Plate recipient, and a little sliver of it is for the Minister's Benevolence Fund. So the percentages aren't quite 50-50.
Right, but it's not the checks people write.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Good clarification.
You know,
Thank
so-
you, Margaret. Yeah, if people put money into the offering, meaning it to go to their pledge, then they write pledge on their check. Otherwise, everything collected is assumed to be part of the collection for the day.
Yeah, other part of my question is all these organizations and so forth, and I know that I've been associated with organizations where people will open their house during the legislative session if people are in town to lobby for a particular bill or anything like that. Have we thought of doing that? I have thought of doing it often, have never done it, and have never chosen to organize it.
Sometimes we have been approached about organizing homestays for different things. We've also in the past been approached about just opening our building for sort of slumber party style staying here. It comes up at times. Usually if it is brought to us, I would look for a coordinator who was up for trying to coordinate that. And if we had a coordinator, we probably would do it. But that's the trick whenever we have a request like that is, to be honest, I don't have the capacity to coordinate homestays. So it would be if somebody was moved to be a coordinator. Yeah. There's another question up here.
My father used to tell me to tone my voice down.
Tone it up.
I just have a question about our oppression anti-racist group, and we haven't really talked about this, but are we not also supportive of the program that you're working with trans, I believe it's trans people? That committee, or is available for support, or I'm not sure what, in
With
what
our
capacity?
class that we're offering coming up, Joanne, or are you
Right.
talking about the Oli Trans Fam that we were partnering with for a while?
Either.
Either. Okay, I'll speak to both. So yeah, we do have an upcoming class that's part of the anti-racism, anti-oppression team's education efforts and the adult faith development's education efforts. So we'll have a class that starts on the 16th. That's a curriculum called Trans Inclusion in Congregations. It's a really excellent curriculum to move us all, whether you're totally new to, like, what is this? Or whether you have years of experience with transgender or gender justice issues. Either way, it's a great curriculum for deepening our own understanding and capacity for being truly inclusive. And then the other, We did for a while have a partnership last year with a local organization called Olympia Trans Family, or Oli Trans Fam, to use our building for some of their community gatherings. That organization is not currently using our building. They're going through some reprioritizing, restructuring, but again, community partnerships, we're happy to partner with, and sometimes they come and go. Yeah. Anything else? All right. So the last thing I wanted to say about sharing our resources is that this is something people often don't realize. We also just in our budget do have a benevolence budget for certain partnerships that we have. So we budget for it, we plan ahead for it. So we have a budgeted line item for sending money to Interfaith Works. It's kind of our membership in Interfaith Works, but it's money that we have in our budget to send to them. We also have in our budget, because of our longtime historical relationship with Coyote Communities, or whatever their new name is going to be, and they're at New Hope Communities now, I believe. But we have a line item for them. And Carbon, if you wouldn't mind moving us to the next slide. And then we have our 2 advocacy networks that we're part of. Thank you so much. Faith Action Network is the interfaith advocacy network, and Justice Washington, the UU Action Network. So all of those organizations, we have a plan to send them an annual amount of money that is budgeted for. So then moving on from money, we'll talk about advocacy. So advocacy is any time that you show up to witness for or advocate for your values or your beliefs or programs in the world. So there's tons of ways to be an advocate, and don't let advocacy scare you. It's not, we don't have to go be an expert. We don't have to testify. All of us can find a way to be an advocate that is right for us. We do this together through our partnerships with Justice Washington and Faith Action Network. In some ways, we are, by being part of that organization, getting our own lobbyists for our values, right? So Faith Action Network and Justice Washington does do lobbying and lobby days with the legislature. We also did action hours during the legislative season last year, and we're going to do it again. We're going to move them to Sundays because that works better with the legislative calendar. But an action hour is just a chance to come together here at OUC with others and go through that list of things that you meant to log in and say, yes, vote on this one. Yes, I support that one. No, don't do that. But it takes a little bit of time to go through the list of all of those things. And so coming to an action hour means that you can do it with support of others who are also doing it together. And then we have the Faith in Action alert list, which is a communication tool we've set up here at OUC. So if something has come up that is a more urgent need than would work its way through our weekly announcement schedule, we can send out word of it on the Faith in Action alert list. So really, if you join the alert list, all you're agreeing to is getting extra emails from me primarily. Although other people on the alert list can send alerts too. It doesn't all have to come from me. And then you'll hear of sign this petition, show up here for this march. Those sorts of things go out on the Faith in Action alert list. It's an opt-in. If you have a Realm login, you can opt yourself into the Faith in Action alert list. And if that's tricky for you, just contact me and I'd be happy to help you get set up on the Faith in Action alert list. And next, we have direct service. So currently, many of our members do direct service on their own, but our current organized group direct service is that we are organizing twice monthly donations to the Kids Backpack Program and twice monthly dinners at Unity Commons and a monthly dinner at Hope Village. And these are all organized by Joanne Young. And Joanne needs 2 volunteers. One at Hope Village and one at Unity Commons. Yeah. So if you can help, this is a great way to directly help others, to bring food, to make sure that folks get a hot meal at their community. If you can help, contact Joanne Young. More help is always needed. Yeah. Yeah, Joanne says it's a living organism. Yeah, takes all of us. So that brings me to my last slide, which actually is ways that you all can join Faith in Action right now. So the first one on there is, yes, join a Blue Apron team to provide dinners. Contact Joanne Young. And I believe, Joanne, people don't have to do this every month, right? Yeah, you could do it when you can. Yeah. Join any of our Faith in Action teams. And like I said, some of our teams are small but mighty, and they would be even more mighty if they weren't so small. So join a Faith in Action team. That would be wonderful. Right now, volunteer with the book sale. There's tons of volunteer roles, something that is right for everyone. And spread the word that the book sale is happening so that people come in and shop. We raise a lot of money for our community partners that way. And then these forums are a great way to get engaged. And next week, we have a forum sponsored by the Environmental Action Team that will have some really great information about the upcoming ballot initiatives. The short version, if you can't come next week, is I'll just say vote no. But come next week for more good information about that, for why you should vote no. Yeah. And then really, Faith in Action itself is a living organism. So if you have an idea, if you have a passion, a concern, an interest in organizing something, come and talk to me. We have a structure that we'd have to run things through, but new projects can start. And if you have an idea and you want to get others involved, just come talk to me about how we could make that happen. All right, so that's the end of our slides. And now we have time for conversation and questions. In particular, I would love to hear from you all what you would like to see in Faith in Action this year. As we're starting this new congregational year, what would you like to see? What do you want to do? What is Faith in Action for us this year? So your answer to that, or if you have a question about something that I've covered.
I'm Gail, and the partnership with Grub, I'm hoping is going to evolve into a specific project. They're working on something called Growing Home Collective, which is a partnership with Black communities about how to get gardens and food choices that fit their cultural needs. And they're just designing that program right now, and then they're going to come to us with specific asks and requests. So I'm hoping that's going to happen.
Wonderful, yeah, and you'll keep us up with the news on that program, yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, Arlene.
I'm glad we're having this, but what we're hearing on the board is that folks miss the days when everyone at OUUC was interested and worked toward the same social justice project. So just seeing all the different projects that we're involved in, I don't know how we're going to pick one. I think forums like this and maybe some more publicity about all the different things that we are doing to our members and our older members especially, will let them know that we haven't dropped the ball just because we're not all working for the same cause anymore.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. That's definitely something that I hear as well from people, is that they miss the days when it felt like we were all united around one single issue or one single project. I think there's a couple things I need to say to that. One is nostalgia isn't always the real picture of what it used to be like. Even when we were doing a lot of work with Camp Quixote and homelessness, there were other projects happening also, you know. And there were people here at OUC that weren't involved because that wasn't their calling or their passion, or because they were busy with something else. And yeah, we've had the conversation many times. What is important? And it doesn't boil down to a single issue. Tim, yeah.
I would just add that Camp Quixote was thrust upon us. It wasn't a choice we actually started out making. And you know, I don't think we're ever going to see any opportunity like that again. So in addition to what Sarah's saying, I think both before especially, but also during and after, there were lots of other things going on. Yeah, okay. But of course, Camp Quixote took a lot of energy, and we had some organizational ways of going about it that worked. We got people involved and so on. But very quickly we had to include other churches to make it continue. So it was in a way it makes sense that it was short term. In that it ran out of its of our involvement, really, eventually.
Yeah, and it looks like we have a question online, so I'm going to take that one next. We also work in the community kitchen most Wednesdays for dinner prep and service, and that's from Meliz. Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up, Meliz. There's a wonderful team of OUC folks who have been doing that together for a long time. And they're working in the community kitchen, putting out those meals that are served downtown from the kitchen. And yeah, I'm sure I'm missing something else that somebody does, because you know, our people are good, hardworking, giving, loving people, right? Yeah.
I would just add, as a sort of a little bit of recent past, that there have been people who were attracted to the idea of what Camp Quixote was all about, so much that they wanted to continue to provide housing. And Bruce Wells, for example, is the one that sticks out in my mind. He's built something like 50 different small houses, sort of in our name, but certainly he came to us as to be a member here because of that history. And he's very much carried it on in his own way. The whole world of providing housing, especially small housing, in Olympia has changed so much that one joins an ongoing project rather than starting your own these days. But they are happening.
Yeah. And so Joanne next, and then Wendy.
Well, I think one of the reasons why we're spread out a little bit more than we were during the Camp Quixote days, or maybe even before that, before our time here, was two areas have risen to the top of need. And that's not a good way to explain it, but hopefully it'll make sense. That's economic justice and environmental justice. And a lot of our energy is going to especially to environmental justice. And we didn't have those, I don't think, as concerns, or at least it wasn't at the top of the list, not just here, but kind of in our country. And it's still not at the top. But
Yeah, it's true. The landscape just continues to change of what are the issues that are out there for us to answer. Yeah. And Wendy?
One of the things that I would like us to do, like in all our spare time, is be kind of advocates and witnesses around the war in Palestine and Israel and other wars. I mean, I know there are protests and witnessing on Fridays at 4, but I'm wondering if we could also have an OUUC presence at those events where we could rally and be witness.
Yeah, thank you for lifting that up, Wendy. Definitely that's on a lot of people's hearts right now. And with anything like that, where there's an ongoing vigil or witness, I think it's easier for our people to show up if they know that they'll be meeting up with others there. And so, yeah, if anyone is interested in anchoring or organizing a presence there, just as simple as being like, I will be there on these dates, come join me, that could certainly be shared amongst the congregation. So yeah, if anyone out there is interested in being the anchor point for a presence at the vigils, please talk to me. Anything else? All right, up here, Karen. Yeah, it's a great time.
Okay, I'm just announcing, this flyer is on a table in the Commons. There's a presentation at the Tacoma Armory about In the Court of the Conqueror. It's an amazing, powerful presentation. George Emilio Sanchez is going to be presenting, and we can get a discount on the tickets through, there's a code, you can contact me, and I don't have it with me. Anyhow, it's the Right Relations Group has been working really hard with them and the presenter to do a good, the boarding school thing on the 11th, yeah, and that's in our newsletter, and this is too.
Yeah. So I'm just going to jump in there that with all of these events, like we do share them in our newsletter and our announcements. And so if you know of a really important community event that OUC members would want to attend, that's in alignment with our values, please send that in for the announcements. Send that to me, put it on the Faith in Action alert list. I mean, that's how we get the word spread around. Yeah, absolutely. What else? What do we want to see? What's calling our hearts? Even if it's just that you've got a concern and you don't know what to do with it. We've got a couple minutes. So what is on our hearts and minds for Faith in Action right now? Tess, hold on for the microphone.
I'd like to do a mini fundraiser, not necessarily a yearly thing, but for concern for animals. You know, I almost lost my cat last year because they expect you to have $800 up front before they even see your pet. And a lot of us just don't have that. And concern for animals, huh? If for emergency medical, that's just for the exam, just to have on hand for the exam.
Yeah.
Concern for animals is probably the biggest resource available for people of low income who you can contact, who will give money to help save your pets.
Yeah. So concern for animals, you know, that's an economic justice issue. It's low-income people needing help for their pets and their animals. Let me just address the process for fundraising requests. Fundraisers are a bit of a special beast here in that we have a process so that we're not just doing fundraising willy-nilly. So if you have an interest in a fundraiser for an issue, come and talk to me. I'll help you walk through the process of applying and getting approval to do a fundraiser. But it would be that the Faith in Action leadership team would agree that this was in alignment with our values and priorities, and then that the board would agree that it fit within the overall calendar and plan for like the master plan of fundraising. And then, and if those steps were worked through, then yeah, we can do those things. So with something like that, or anything else that people are thinking of, do go ahead and get in touch with me. And so Tess, you and I can talk later. Yeah, we've got another one from online. We'll go there first, and then we'll come back here. So Anne shares, vision for this year. I appreciate the deep listening resources for ongoing life practice. Thank you, Anne. Yeah, so faith in action, it's action, but it is also our faith. And so doing faith in action deepens your own spiritual practice and your own faith development as well. And put those pieces together. The resources that are coming out for faith development or for spiritual life can enrich and deepen our faith and action practices as well, and vice versa. Karen.
I just wanted to say, couldn't Concern for Animals apply for our Share the Plate program too?
That's absolutely true, and thanks for that reminder. Yeah, so local organizations can all also apply for the Share the Plate funding, and those applications are on our website. And I mean, that is a once-a-year application, so it can be that you're off the funding cycle, but it's another opportunity to be funded is through the Share the Plate. Anything else? All right, well, I really appreciate and thank you all. There's a lot of ringers here in the room who are very busy in faith and action themselves, and those online, and everyone for your time today. So thank you, and this recording will be available for others later. And we'll go ahead and wrap up. So I'm going to extinguish the chalice. May this light that calls to us to love, to justice, and to a deepening of the Spirit live in our hearts until we meet again. Blessed be all. Thank you. Thank you, Tim.